Please tell us a little bit about your last visit in Romania.
Thank you very much, and bună ziua. The American Romanian Business Council, which I'm the president of, I'm here to meet with the new government, to meet with your new prime minister and new cabinet ministers, as well as the president, Johannes. And really our intentions are, how do we continue to deepen the relationship economically and commercially between Romania and the United States.
Now, the U.S.-Romanian relations have always been good, at least in the last 2 decades or so, but they mainly focused on the military relations. We don't see that much cooperation, so to say, on the business side of things or cultural side of things. And I'm not pinpointing fingers to Romania or US. It's just focused a lot on NATO, a lot on the military support. Why do you think that is, and what can we do to improve that?
I think Romania and the U.S. have a very special relationship, and we have for some time. Clearly, there was a very big focus on Romania during the early 2000s as Romania was becoming members of NATO and becoming members of the European Union. The United States were obviously huge supporters of Romania to become part of both of those very large organizations and very important organizations. And now I think our relationship has evolved in a sense as Romania becomes more European and more part of the European EU, if you will. But in my opinion, we've never lost that special connection. And the fact that 80% of Romanians think very highly of America is something very, very special. And I think that's something that we cherish for those of us who know Romania very well in Washington and want to make sure we never lose that connection.
I got to admit, I've done a little bit of research online, and I found a Twitter account. I'm not sure if it's yours, but I found a picture saying, looking for my ancestors in a place in Romania. So could we say you have a stake in this country as well?
That's very funny. And it's funny because Twitter with President Trump has become such a big thing.
Exactly.
I've actually moved it to the 3rd page of my phone, and I don't look at Twitter anymore because there's too much Twitter in our lives. Very funny that you asked that question. So after I created the Romania Business Council, my father came to me and said, I think we're Romanian, and I didn't know. And he found the immigration card of my great-grandfather, which said we immigrated from a small town called Apold, A-P-O-L-D, in Transylvania.
That's why I said you have a stake in this country.
I do. So now I found out after I created the council that I am actually Romanian, and my father and I a couple years ago took a trip and went to Apold to find our home where my great-grandfather immigrated from and to see where our roots are. And
were you able to track down any?
We did. We did. The funniest part actually is that on our immigration card it said that our last name was Eridon, E-R-I-D-O-N, but when we showed it to the mayor of Apold, he said, no, Spiridon. So now we found out that the name of our ancestors are actually Spiridon,
which was
Eridon.
very common back then when you arrived in a new country to have the name changed. Or the person to mispronounce it or to mishear it.
Yeah, exactly. But what's even most funny of the whole story is that my brother named his daughter Eridon because we thought that was our Romanian name. And now we found out it's not, and it's Spiridon, but he's not going to change my niece's name. She'll stay Eridon, unfortunately. But we really tried to preserve that name through our children when we found out.
Do Romanians have a specific skill or character trait that you identified working here and traveling to this region?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it until you asked the question, but I would say that at least for most of the Romanians that I have gotten to know, and I would attribute these qualities to myself as well, that they're pretty humble, but also quite confident, quite intelligent, and very honestly wanting to make a real connection with the people that they interact with. And so I think those are great qualities, and you can really feel, again, when you come here, the real desire and the real affection for America. And that's fun because you don't feel that everywhere.
That's reassuring, at least.
It is. It really is, and it makes a big difference especially when you have a government that wants to be pro-business, and then you have a people that are pro-business. It really makes for a great environment to encourage more American companies to come and do business.
What's your first feeling about the new government? How do they seem? Do they seem open to business, and what kind of businesses are they interested in?
Yeah, they really are. I met yesterday with, as I said, President Johannes, as well as the Prime Minister. I met with the Minister of Economy and many of the ministers in the cabinet, and I was particularly impressed with their plan. And their interest in not just attracting American business, but attracting more business, but also real focus on developing Romanian companies. And that's a really important step, because the more Romanian companies that have success, the better the business environment will continue to be in Romania, which makes it a great environment for all companies, including American. But we talked specifically about, areas where we think we can increase cooperation, and I think from our perspective, those fields are very naturally defense, which we've now seen an increase of 2% of GDP of Romanian spending. So that's going to attract more defense companies and more interest, which will result in more investments and more technology.
Does that include Bell helicopters?
Of course.
Because
yes.
I want to get back to that, and I want to get into that a little bit.
Sure. Bell Helicopters is clearly one of the companies. But we also see great opportunities in agriculture, in healthcare, in energy. And so those are really a lot of the areas that we're very focused on, and it seems as the government is focused on as well.
I'm sure you read the news and you've seen the news. We have been having protests in the last few weeks in Romania, big protests, the biggest actually since 1989. What's Washington's opinion about that? Are they worried on one sense that they look at Romania and say, okay, might not be as stable as we think, or do they see, let's say, a hope in people going on to protest against corruption, which is obviously one of the main American policies in Eastern Europe, and specifically in Romania? They've been pushing anti-corruption laws, and obviously a lot of efforts into supporting Romanians who fight corruption. How does Washington look at all these recent events?
I think somebody who doesn't know Romania or doesn't understand Romania and quickly looks at just the headlines and sees, oh my gosh, protest, might say, wow, that's an unstable place to be. But for those who understand Romania and have spent a little bit of time, they'll see it as very healthy, and they'll see it as a very positive thing. All the demonstrations were very peaceful. The people saw something that they didn't like, and they came out peacefully and said, we don't approve. And I think that's a great message, and I think it's a very healthy message. And so I look at it as a very, very positive thing. The government has heard the message, I think. That's my sense, at least in the conversations that I've had, that they've heard the message, and they're moving forward with a positive agenda going forward, and hopefully one that the people do approve of, because if they don't, then they're not going to re-elect the politicians. So they really have to listen to the people, as you know.
Yeah. Did you have any clients that specifically asked anything about this situation? Did they say, hey, what's going on? Should we be worried about our investments, or were they reassured from the beginning?
Yeah, I think most of them understood. They have country people here, they have experts here, they have staff on the ground, and I think the feeling was that this is a good, healthy thing that's taking place. And so, in a sense, I don't mean to demean it, but in a sense, we should be proud of sort of what has taken place. And as long as it stays very peaceful and as long as it stays very positive, it's a very healthy thing for people to express themselves.
How would you best describe your work in Romania? Policymaker, lobbyist? Are you closer to the politics side of things or the business side of things?
Really stay away from the politics as much as possible. We are really focused on the business side and really the dialogue of business, and making sure that our companies at high levels are having interactions with your government officials at high levels, so that we're both on the same page and that we understand each other, and we understand each other's needs and concerns and wants and desires, to make sure that we can continue to grow the relationship. And one of the most successful experiences that a company can have is to invest in Romania and then to reinvest. And that's what we're starting to see, a lot of companies that are reinvesting in Romania. And that's the greatest signal that things are working well and that things are very, very positive. And very honestly, most companies that come to Romania have a very good experience, a very positive experience, and continue to have success here. What I'm intending to also do is to try to promote that more within our government structure in Washington, but also within the business world across the United States.
And what kind of companies are we talking about? What kind of companies you represent, or your company represents in Romania?
Mostly it's the very large, big multinational companies, like companies like ExxonMobil and Smithfield Foods and Lockheed Martin and big company, Bell Helicopter, big companies that are multinationals working all over the world. We have a few companies that are specialized and they focus mostly on Romania. We have a couple of those, but for the most part it's multinational companies with vast interest in fields of healthcare and finance and defense and energy.
And why, could you please explain me why these companies need a person like you to negotiate on behalf of them? Why can't they just send someone, each company send a representative and talk to the Romanian officials or any government? What's your specific role in this?
So I would actually argue that they don't need me, that the companies are having success and they are having dialogues, but they like having this organization because the organization brings together all the big American companies to have one common voice, to have one common message about how can we continue to develop the relationship even stronger. So the companies that belong to AMRO, as we call it, are companies that really believe in the strategic relationship between America and Romania, and they want to ensure that it stays very strong. So they don't need me, but they like having the organization because they believe in this bilateral relationship.
Let's start with Chevron. It's one of the American companies who was invested and is invested in Romania, but it also had a bit of a bad PR, so to say, back when they had the shale gas scandals 2-3 years ago. Is Chevron still interested in the Romanian market, and if so, did it take notice of those protests and those, let's say, not so supportive public polls saying we
Sure.
don't want shale gas in Romania, we don't want this type of exploitation?
Yeah, I think, and not just Chevron, but there were a lot of companies that were very interested in investing in shale gas throughout Central Europe, in Hungary, Poland, Ukraine, etc., Lithuania. There were a lot of, everyone saw the real positive opportunities.
And including in the States, back home, you guys
absolutely
have it. So yeah, I'm aware it's not just a Romanian phenomenon.
No, not
but
at all.
But in Romania and in many other places, but when it comes to Romania, it did spark a lot of controversy back then.
It did, and I suspect some of it was fabricated and some of it was real. But at the end of the day, really, the reasons why it didn't work out were global energy prices that began to lower. Exploring shale gas in the U.S. at the time was easier and more developed, and more commercially developed. And then what we also found is the technical shale exploration here was more complicated than it was in the U.S. It was a very different set of circumstances. And then very candidly, a lot of the governments maybe got a little ahead of themselves on some regulations and taxing of revenues and those types of things. And so all those factors together, 4 or 5 different factors together, really made for the companies to not explore this anymore. To say that Chevron would not be interested in Romania, I would never say that. I think Chevron had a very positive experience in Romania. I think they see Romania as a very positive place to do business. And if other opportunities, again, I don't speak for Chevron, but if other opportunities came along, I'm sure Chevron would certainly be open to those.
Looks like it, from what I've read, that the French are bringing more to the table at the moment in terms of actually willing to move their factory to Romania. What's Bell contra offer, or what can Bell helicopters bring to Romania if they're going to win this contract?
Yeah, so unfortunately I can't speak on behalf of Bell or what their intentions might be or what their offers would be. But I can tell you very frankly, for purposes of Romania, competition is good. right? If you only have one vendor, then it makes it very, very difficult to have much leverage in your negotiations on behalf of Romania. To have multiple companies competing for the same project is a very good thing. And so, what I have advised, and I'm sure Romania is doing very closely, is making sure that they take advantage of that and make sure that they do get what they want out of it, which is going to be what we call industrial cooperation, which is whichever company wins, they're going to continue to work with Romanian companies to develop the products, to assemble the products, whatever the negotiation might be. But also, importantly, technology transfer. You want to make sure that the Romanian people are understanding the technology that's going into the products, and that they are able themselves to then develop more. And that's one of the things that I really am hoping we're able to get to at some point soon in our relationship. And that's something that actually we'll be proposing, our organization will be proposing to the U.S. side, is that we find ways to work more with innovative Romanians, and matching innovative Romanians with Americans who are really good at commercializing innovation, and make a good marriage that benefits both sides. And that's really where we hope that the relationship gets to, because Romania still has a lot of manufacturing jobs and a lot of that sector, but it's going to eventually evolve into much more of a high-tech and service-oriented, exactly. And Romania is going to get there, and sooner than it probably thinks.
And in terms of these negotiations, how much are they politics? How much are they really down to 100% business?
It's hard to determine the percentage for each one. I mean, obviously, if this were a plant where we were going to be building, steel ball bearings, there wouldn't be much politics involved, right? It's a commercial deal. But when you get into defense and you get into picking between Europe and the U.S. technologies, there's a certain amount of politics that plays into it, and Romania has to weigh that, right? I mean, Romania is sitting in this very special European Union club where there's lots of dynamics happening between the various players within the European Union on various issues and objectives and things that Romania wants to get done. And so there are certain pressures that take place within that special club. And then they also have this special relationship with America, which they love very much and dearly. I would say, as an American and representing American companies, that I always feel that the American technology and the American products are second to none. But sometimes they're also expensive. So, countries have to weigh those decisions. But, I feel very confident that if you put most American companies up against companies from other countries, that, we have a good shot at winning most contracts. But at the end of the day, what we see really is most countries, they have to find the balance between Europe and the U.S., and they've got to make sure that they strike it the right way. And I think it's different for every country and what that balance is. And Romania's got to figure that out internally, what that balance is, and make sure that they hit it the right way so that they keep, as we say, both mom and dad happy, right?
You said the American products, they're second to none. And also, right now, we have a new president in Washington who advocates and runs on a slogan called America First. How is that going to influence the relations from Romania to Washington, Bucharest, Washington wise?
I don't think anybody knows right now, to be very honest. I mean, we're in day 27, I think, of the Trump administration, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, and, we don't have a commerce secretary yet. We don't have a trade representative yet. We just got our Secretary of State very recently. So we don't know yet what the real impact is.
Are you worried or hopeful?
Keeping a watchful eye. It's very clear from the campaign rhetoric that the America First and the focus on some of these trade issues were clearly targeted at Mexico and at China and maybe Asia more generally. We haven't seen much of it targeted at Europe. I think there's a real understanding, and as Trump is a businessman as well, that you have to, a lot of times, for your products, be close to your markets. You can't just do everything from America. Somebody might argue that you can do that in the U.S.-Mexico relationship, but it's pretty hard to do it in the U.S.-Europe relationship. So, I'm optimistic that we continue to have sort of a business as usual operation and working with Europe and specifically with Romania. But what I would say that I think, and this is something that I spent time talking to the government ministers about yesterday, is that I think we ought to think more about how do we help Romanian companies break into the US market? Right? Because then that does help us to really balance the relationship out. We obviously have heavy American investment in Romania, but we don't have a lot of Romanian investment in the US. So how do we help those Romanian businessmen and women break into a very large market? And that's something
what kind
that,
of companies do you have in mind, Romanian companies, or not specifically names, but what kind of industries do you think have a chance to break into the US market?
High tech. I think a lot of, there's so much high-tech investment here from U.S. companies like, from Oracle to Google to IBM, you name it.
But that's because of the, let's say, more affordable labor costs in terms of even the humans, human resource. You get really good skilled ITs who are working most of the times for less money than, let's say, in the U.S. or.
But they're learning. Right? They're learning from the companies. They're seeing how it's done. They're seeing how they produce these software. They're seeing some of the innovations. And that's what's going to help to spur that innovation from the Romanian side to say, hey, I can do that, or I can come up with my own idea. I can come up with my own, and they have the technical skills to do it. They just need a little bit of the inspiration on the art side, and I think that will happen. And I think you'll start to see, Romanian startups that will develop something here in Bucharest or Brasov or somewhere, and say, hey, why can't we take that to Silicon Valley, or why can't we take that to the U.S. and develop it in a much larger market? And so I'd love to see those types of examples of, you look at a great example in Estonia. The Estonians created Skype. A lot of people don't realize that came out of Estonia. So you take examples like that and you can really find some success. And I think you can take that on sort of the exciting, sexy, high-tech side, but also, simple, a lot of times simple products, simple manufacturing, simple, making candles. I mean, there are still opportunities in the U.S. because so much of that has left and gone to other places. If Romanian companies are able to do it in a much less expensive way, there are opportunities for, and I'm not talking about investing in New York City, I'm talking about investing in Dayton, Ohio, right? And small places like that where you can have success, but for Romania, that's still a very big market.
One last question. What's the message you're going to take back to Washington after your 2-day visit in Romania?
My message is that this new government is very pro-business and very pro-American, and that we need to take advantage of the opportunities to do more business with Romania, and that we need to have I'm going to be leading a business mission here on March 29th and 30th, where I'm going to be bringing American companies to meet with the government, and my message to them will be, you need to come and not miss out on the opportunity, because it's a great opportunity now to continue to work here and invest here in Romania, and again, ensure that this relationship, we really want the commercial pillar of the relationship to grow as strong as our strategic and military pillar.
Eric Stewart, thank you very much for joining us. Mulțumesc.
Mulțumesc.
Thank you for being in Romania, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Vă mulțumesc și dumneavoastră pentru audiență. Rămâneți în continuare pe adevărul.ro. O zi bună, la revedere!